Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the sun had disappeared. For months, daylight was no brighter than a twilight shadow. Crops failed, famine spread, and across the known world, people believed the end of days had begun. This was not a myth. It really happened. Historians call it the worst year in human history, the year 536 AD. History remembers wars, plagues, and natural disasters. But hidden in the shadows is a catastrophe so immense it almost erased human civilization from the map. It was a year when the skies darkened, the temperature plunged, and famine consumed continents. A mysterious veil of dust cloaked the earth, and no one knew why. Some thought it was the wrath of gods. Others believed demons had swallowed the sun. But science today reveals something even more terrifying. This is the forgotten story of the year the sun vanished, and how humanity barely survived. It began suddenly, in the spring of 536. Eyewitnesses from across Europe and the Middle East recorded the same chilling event. Byzantine historian Procopius wrote, "For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during the whole year." Irish monks noted in their chronicles that a failure of bread began that year. In China, records describe a mysterious yellow dust falling from the sky. For 18 months, the sun was dimmed. Even at noon, shadows were strange and weak, as though the world itself had been cursed. But this wasn't just darkness. It was cold. Global temperatures dropped by as much as 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, enough to devastate harvests. The results were catastrophic. In Europe, crops withered and famine spread. Millions starved. In Ireland, entire communities collapsed, with written records calling it a year without bread. In China, summer snow fell. Crops failed, rivers froze, and famine tore through dynasties. In Central America, evidence shows societies suffered massive disruption. People everywhere thought the world was ending, and for many, it did. But the nightmare didn't end there. Just a few years later, in 541 AD, disaster struck again. The plague of Justinian, one of the deadliest pandemics in history, swept through the Byzantine Empire. Some historians argue that the weakened population, starved and vulnerable after years of famine, made the plague's devastation inevitable. It killed perhaps half the population of Constantinople, and millions more across Europe and the Mediterranean. The chain of events that began in 536 triggered one of the darkest centuries in human history. For centuries, no one knew why the sun had vanished. But in recent decades, scientists uncovered chilling evidence. Ice core samples from Greenland and Antarctica show massive deposits of volcanic ash from around 536 AD. Tree rings across Europe and Asia reveal stunted growth for years after. Studies now suggest a catastrophic volcanic eruption, possibly in Iceland, blasted so much ash and sulfur into the stratosphere that it blocked sunlight worldwide. And the horror didn't stop there. Additional eruptions in 540 and 547 AD kept the Earth in a state of chaos for over a decade. This wasn't just one disaster. It was a cascade of apocalyptic events. The long shadow of 536 reshaped history itself. In Scandinavia, archaeologists believe the collapse of societies and religious shifts were linked to the disaster. Some even suggest this era inspired apocalyptic Norse myths of Ragnarok, the end of the world. In the Eastern Roman Empire, resources were stretched thin. Famine and plague devastated populations, and the empire began its long decline. In Asia, dynasties weakened, migrations increased, and instability spread. The darkness of 536 was not just a natural disaster. It was a turning point that set human history on a new path. Where history left gaps, myth rushed in. In Europe, whispers spread of a cursed sun. In Norse mythology, the story of Fimbulwinter, a long, harsh winter before Ragnarok, eerily mirrors the events of 536. In Central American legends, some stories speak of a sun that once failed to rise. Perhaps these myths were echoes of the catastrophe that haunted generations. Why does the year 536 matter today? Because what happened once could happen again. Modern scientists warn that another supervolcano eruption, like Yellowstone or Iceland's Lakey system, could blanket the Earth in ash, disrupting agriculture, collapsing economies, and throwing billions into famine. In fact, smaller versions of this disaster have already happened. In 1815, the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia caused the year without a summer. In 1883, Krakatoa's eruption caused global sunsets so red they inspired famous paintings. 536 was worse than both combined. And if it happened once, it can happen again. The year 536. AD stands as a warning carved into history. A year when the sun vanished. A year when millions starved. A year when humanity nearly collapsed. It was the darkest year ever recorded, the year the world itself seemed to stop breathing. And yet, humanity survived. Civilizations fell, but others rose. Darkness covered the world, but eventually, the light returned. As we face the uncertainties of our own age, the story of 536 reminds us that history is fragile, and that our survival can never be taken for granted. The story of 536 AD is just one of many forgotten catastrophes that shaped our world. If you want to uncover more of history's hidden mysteries, from vanished cities to apocalyptic plagues, subscribe, share this video, and join me on this journey through the shadows of the past. Because sometimes, the scariest parts of history are the ones we've almost forgotten.